There's a moment in the airport lounge where you catch yourself in the glass. You're in between cities again. The suit still fits, but there's something in the posture that wasn't there 6 months ago. A slight forward lean, shoulders less square. You notice it, then immediately look away. Welcome back to Iron Suits, where strength wears a crown. I am your host, Marwan Killu. You've been traveling every week, for 3 years. London, Dubai, Singapore, Austin. You tell yourself it's working. The deals are closing, the calendar's full. But somewhere between the Uber and the gates, you start to skipping things. Small things. The kind of things you used to consider non-negotiable when you were building the first company. Back when you had less money and more rules. Now you have both money and reasons. Reasons why the hotel doesn't matter this trip. Reasons why dinner can be heavy. Reasons why you'll train when you're home, when the quarter closes, when the roadshow ends. Reasons that sound like strategy but feel like surrender. You're not out of shape. Not yet. But you're also not what you were. And the worst part is that you stop noticing when you negotiate. It just happens. Somewhere over the Atlantic, between the noise-cancelling headphones and the second drink, the old laws stopped applying. You convince yourself that travel changed the game, that the rules you live by when you're stationary don't translate at altitude. But they do. And the erosion you're pretending not to see isn't about travel. It's about what you decided travel allowed you to become. Here's a law. Travel doesn't make you soft. Negotiation does. The man who gets on a plane 12 times a month and stays sharp didn't discover some secret routine or elite biohack. He just refused to renegotiate his standards when the environment changed. That's it. That's the elite mechanism. That's the entire mechanism, even. Not elite. Most men treat travel like it's an exemption zone. A place where the normal rules are suspended because the context is harder. Tighter schedules, different time zones, no equipment, client dinners, jet lag. All true, all irrelevant. Because the men who stay in form while traveling constantly aren't doing so despite the constraints. They're doing it within them. And the difference between those two positions is everything. One is a negotiation, the other is a law. When you negotiate, you're asking the situation for permission. Can I train today, given that I landed at 11 p.m.? Can I eat clean, given that the client chose the restaurant? Can I hold my standards, given that I'm tired, displaced, and operating someone else's schedule? The answer is always no if you're asking. But men who refuse to get soft don't ask. They decide what happens regardless of location, and then they execute inside whatever space exists. They don't need ideal conditions. They need a floor, 6 feet of space, and 30 minutes, sometimes even less. The difference isn't discipline. It's deeper than that. It's identity. It's a refusal to let geography determine the standards. Because once you accept that your standards are conditional on circumstances, you've already lost. You've just admitted that you're not the one in control. The hotel is. The client is. The time zone is. And that's not a man who runs things. That's a man who gets run. So here are the rules. Not tips, not strategies, rules. The kind that don't bend when you're in a different city. You train before the day starts, or you've already lost it. Most men who travel constantly tell themselves they'll train after the meetings, after dinner, after the calls, which means they don't train. Because the day doesn't end on your terms when you're traveling. It ends when the last person stops talking, when the car finally arrives, when you get back to the room and the discipline you had at 6 a.m. is gone. Men who stay sharp on the road train in the morning. Not because mornings are magic, but because mornings are yours. No one owns your 5 a.m. No one schedules over it. No client calls into it. It's the only time that belongs to you completely, and if you give that away, you've given away the only leverage you had. It doesn't matter if you landed 4 hours ago. It doesn't matter if the gym is bad or non-existent. It doesn't matter if you're tired. You train because that's the first decision of the day, and the first decision sets the terms for every decision after it. When you train first, you've already won something. You've proven to yourself that the standards apply here too, that you're not renegotiating, that the rules travel with you, not against you. When you don't, you spend the rest of the day in a low-grade state of compromise. You skip the one thing that you said mattered, which means everything else you say matters a little bit less now. 2, you've introduced doubt, and doubt is expensive when you're trying to run things from 4 time zones away. You eat like someone who has to perform, not like someone on vacation. This is where men collapse without realizing it. They start treating travel meals like rewards. The logic is insidious. I'm working hard. I'm away from home. I'm in a good city. The client wants to go here. I deserve this. All of which sounds reasonable until you realize you've been deserving this 3 nights a week for 2 years. Excuse me, I just had to answer the door. Okay. Men who stay lean while traveling treat food like fuel, not entertainment. They don't eat to celebrate being in Tokyo or London. They eat to be sharp tomorrow morning when the pitch starts, or the negotiations begin, or the negotiation begins, even. The meal is infrastructure. It's not the highlight of the trip. That doesn't mean deprivation. It means precision, protein, vegetables, minimal trash, no negotiation at the bread table, no just this once at the dessert menu, no treating the wine like wine list like a scorecard. Because here's what actually happens when you eat like you're on vacation while traveling for work. You wake up slightly worse, slightly puffier, slightly slower, slightly less sharp. And in a world where you're being evaluated constantly by clients, investors, competitors, your own team, slightly worse is just worse. The men who don't get soft know this. So they order simply. They skip courses. They don't make a performance out of it. But they also don't negotiate. They stay informed because they understand that every city is a stage and every morning is an assessment. You don't use a hotel as an excuse. You use it as the venue. Bad gym. No gym. Gym's closed. Equipment is broken. Treadmills are full. The weights only go to 50 pounds. All legitimate observations, none of them matter. Because the men who stay in shape on the road stopped depending on hotel gyms years ago. They carry their standards with them. Bodyweight circuits in the room, sprints on the stairwell, a single kettlebell if they're lucky. They don't need a facility. They need a floor and a refusal to negotiate. The hotel room becomes a training ground. 20 minutes, no rest, push-ups, squats, lunges, planks, burpees if the ceiling is high enough. It's not pretty, it's not optimal, but it's done. And done is the only thing that matters when you're trying not to get soft. This is the part most men miss. They think discipline requires the right environment. It doesn't. Discipline is what you do when the environment is wrong and you proceed anyway. The 5-star hotel with a glossy gym isn't a test. The 3-star spot with no equipment and a 6 a.m. checkout is the test. And the men who pass it are the ones who decided years ago that their standards don't require permission from the venue. You sleep like survival depends on it because everything else does. This is the rule most men violate without thinking. They'll protect the morning training, they'll handle the food, but they'll stay up until 1 a.m. answering emails, taking calls, or sitting at the bar with the team because it feels productive, or necessary, or social. And then they wonder why they feel like shit. Men who refuse to get soft treat sleep like a non-negotiable infrastructure. They know that every other rule collapses without it. No sleep, no performance, no edge. No edge, no reason to be on the road in the first place. So they shut it down. They don't stay for the third drink. They don't take the 11 p.m. call unless it's life or death. They don't scroll until their eyes blur. They get in the room, they get in the bed, and they get the hours. 7 minimum, 8 if possible, and they design backwards from that. If the morning starts at 5:30, they're asleep by 10. If the flight lands at midnight, they clear the next morning. They don't fight biology. They don't pretend caffeine is a strategy. Because here's the truth. Tired men make soft decisions. They skip training. They eat worse. They tolerate things they wouldn't tolerate rested. Fatigue is the first negotiation. Everything else follows. You move between meetings, or you decay between them. Sitting is where most men lose without knowing it. They go from the flight, to the car, to the conference room, to the dinner table, to the car, to the bed. 10,000 steps sounds good until you realize 8,000 of them happen in an airport terminal. Men who stay sharp on the road don't just train in the morning. They move throughout the day. They take their stairs. They walk between meetings where possible. when possible. They stand between calls. They treat stillness like atrophy, because it is. This isn't about fitness. It's about maintaining the internal standard. The body doesn't care if you're in a board meeting or on a plane. It only knows motion or stillness. And stillness compounded over weeks of travel creates the exact softness you're pretending isn't happening. So you move, not for steps, not for metrics, because standing still while traveling constantly is how you become someone you don't recognize 6 months later. You don't drink to cope, or you need to cope with what you become. Alcohol is the most elegant collapse mechanism in travel. It's social. It's expected. It's how deals get done, how relationships get built, how the day gets closed. All true, also irrelevant. Because the men who stay sharp while traveling treat alcohol like a calculated risk, not a rhythm. They're not sober, they're selective. One drink at the dinner table, not 3, not 6, not the nightcap and the morning after negotiation with themselves about whether they'll train. The issue isn't the drink, it's a pattern. It's a nightly escape. It's a slow accumulation of nights where you use alcohol to smooth over the fatigue, the displacement, the stress. And once that becomes the pattern, you're not traveling well. You're coping, and coping makes you soft. Men who refuse to get soft know the difference. They'll have a drink when it matters. They'll skip it when it doesn't. And they never ever let it become the thing they need to get through the trip. Because needing it means you've already lost. Here's what happens when you violate these rules. It's not dramatic. You don't wake up one day unrecognizable. The erosion is quiet, incremental. A pound here, a skip session there, a slightly worse photo, a suit that fits differently, a moment in the mirror that lasts too long. And then one day you're sitting across from someone younger, sharper, leaner, and you realize they're looking at you the way you used to look at men who let it go. Not from judgment, not with judgment, with information. With the quiet assessment that you're not what you were. That you've negotiated your way into softness and called it practicality. That's the cost. Not the weight, not the fitness, the perception. The erosion of the thing you spent years building. The unspoken understanding that you're no longer the sharp end of the spear. Your management, you're administrative. You're the guy who used to be in form. And here's the worst part. You will feel it before anyone says it. You'll notice the room treating you slightly different. Slightly less deference. Slightly more familiarity. Not because you're less capable, because you look like you've started negotiating. And men who negotiate with their standards don't command the same rooms. The clients still meet with you. The deals still close. But something has shifted. The invisible currency you used to carry, the edge, the presence, the quiet authority that comes from being visibly undecayed, has diminished. And you can't buy it back with results. You can't argue your way into it. You can only earn it by refusing to let it erode in the first place. That's what's at stake. Not your health, your position. Travel reveals who you are when no one's watching and the rules aren't enforced. It reveals whether your standards are real or just convenient, whether you're disciplined or just structured, whether you run yourself or the calendar runs you. Most men fail this test slowly. They don't collapse. They compromise. And compromise, repeated across months and cities, becomes who they are. The men who don't get soft aren't special. They didn't find a system. They just refused a negotiation. They decided that the rules apply everywhere, and then they lived inside that decision until it wasn't a decision anymore. Until it was just how things are handled. You're either that or you're not. And the mirror already knows which man you've decided to be. You don't get soft on the road. You reveal that you already were. That's all I've got for you today. My coffee has just gone cold. I hope this episode was helpful. Let me know by leaving me a review on iTunes. You can tell me how awesome my podcast is or how much of an a-hole I am. I'm only joking. A positive review would be greatly appreciated. That helps grow the show. And another thing that you can do for me is if you found it helpful and if added value to your life, then share it with another leader. Again, this is how we grow the show and help more people. Make sure you follow me on my socials. I am on Facebook under Marwan Killu and LinkedIn under Marwan Killu Fitness. You can watch this on YouTube as well under Marwan Killu. And the last thing is make sure you subscribe to the show so you get notifications when new episodes go live. Until next time, talk to you. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.